Have you ever wondered what might be happening behind the closed doors of a school bathroom, especially when it comes to a child who refuses to use it? Imagine this scenario. Your child comes home every day talking about how they just couldn't bring themselves to use the school bathroom. You know that something must be wrong, but what exactly is it? Is it a simple case of a child being overly shy, or is there something much darker hiding behind the refusal? This story, which starts like any other school dilemma, is far more twisted than we could ever expect, and it's one that's going to shock you. You're about to uncover the mystery, and I promise, by the end of this video, you will have a completely different perspective on this seemingly innocent school routine. Now, before we go any further, I want you to think about something. When you were a kid, was there ever a time when something about school didn't sit right with you? Maybe it was the cafeteria food, the loud noise in the hallways, or the way a certain class made you feel. But what if your child was dealing with something far worse, something they couldn't explain? What if their daily routine was disrupted by an invisible force, something so troubling that they felt unsafe in one of the most mundane places, like the school bathroom? It's unsettling to even think about, right? But for some children, that's a reality they face every single day. Now, you're probably wondering, what could be so terrifying about a school bathroom that a child would go to such lengths to avoid it? That's exactly what we're here to uncover today. In this video, we're going to take you through the emotional and psychological journey of a child who just couldn't bring themselves to enter the school bathroom, and how this innocent-sounding problem turns into something much darker than you could ever imagine. Stick with me as we explore the hidden truth that no one ever expected, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end because the twist you'll witness will leave you speechless. This isn't just about a child's bathroom phobia or some innocent misunderstanding. The hidden camera footage we're about to reveal shows something shocking, something that changes the way we view school life forever. It's not just about avoiding the bathroom for a few minutes. It's about a much deeper fear that's been festering, something that we can't ignore anymore. When parents first hear that their child refuses to use the bathroom at school, it often seems like something small. But what happens when they start digging deeper, only to uncover an unsettling reality that no one ever imagined? As you sit back and watch this unfold, ask yourself this question: what's the real reason a child would refuse something as basic as going to the bathroom? Could it be a fear of bullies, or something more insidious? Something that goes beyond what we, as adults, ever considered possible? We're about to take a deep dive into this child's life, revealing things that may surprise you, disturb you, and even make you question what really goes on in our schools. It's a story that touches on the complexity of childhood fears, social pressures, and the role of school environments in shaping a child's emotional and mental well-being. In a moment, you're going to see hidden camera footage that could change the way we think about school bathrooms forever. But before we get there, I want you to put yourself in this child's shoes for just a second. Imagine being in a place where you feel like something is off, but you can't put your finger on it. That's exactly what this child is going through, and when the truth finally comes to light, it's more than anyone could have ever predicted. You'll be introduced to a young girl named Emma, whose reluctance to use the school bathroom seemed innocent enough at first. Her parents, puzzled by her behavior, couldn't understand why their bright, energetic daughter, someone who had always been comfortable in school, would suddenly refuse to go near the bathroom. As concerned parents, they did what any parent would do. They asked questions, they investigated, but the answers were never quite clear. Could it be a phase? A harmless quirk that would eventually fade? Or was there something more troubling lurking beneath the surface? As Emma's behavior continued, her parents decided to install a hidden camera in the school bathroom to get to the bottom of things. What they discovered was far from what they ever expected. What started as a simple inquiry into a child's refusal to use a bathroom spiraled into something much darker, revealing a deep and unsettling truth. Something that would forever change how we view the role of safety and trust in our schools. But let me tell you this right now. What you're about to witness in the hidden camera footage is not something you'll easily forget. It's disturbing, eye-opening, and will make you rethink everything you know about school environments. We'll dive into Emma's story, uncovering the moments that led to her fear and the shocking reveal of what was really happening inside that bathroom. But it doesn't stop there. We're going to explore how the adults around Emma missed the signs, how the system failed to protect her, and how one simple act of bravery changed the course of everything. I know you're sitting there, wanting to find out the truth right now, and trust me, you're going to get it. But before we reveal the footage, I need you to stay with me a little longer. This video isn't just about uncovering one child's fears. It's about something bigger, something that affects many students, and something we as a society have been overlooking for too long. You'll be asking yourself, how many other children are silently suffering? How many other stories have we yet to uncover? You're on the edge of your seat, I can tell. And I'm about to take you to a place you never saw coming. But be warned, once you see this footage, you'll never look at school bathrooms the same way again. Stay with me, stay tuned, because the truth is about to be revealed, and it's something you won't be able to forget. As Emma's reluctance to use the school bathroom grew more persistent, her parents, Michael and Sarah, began to feel a sense of unease that they couldn't shake. They'd always known their daughter to be a cheerful, outgoing young girl with a heart full of curiosity. Emma had always been the type to make friends easily, to engage with her classmates, and to participate in school activities without hesitation. But over the past few weeks, something had changed. It was subtle at first, just a few comments here and there about how she didn't need to go to the bathroom or how she could wait until she got home. They didn't think much of it at first. After all, kids go through phases, right? Maybe she was simply embarrassed or had developed some strange habit. It wasn't until Emma began to express actual distress when the topic came up that the parents started to feel the weight of the situation. It wasn't just the refusal to use the bathroom. It was her overall behavior that had taken a turn. Her usually positive attitude shifted, and there was a noticeable tension about her whenever they drove to school. Emma, who was once eager to go to class and see her friends, began dragging her feet in the morning, and her once bright eyes now looked distant, clouded with anxiety. Her parents brushed off their concerns at first, attributing the changes to a bad day at school or some minor conflict with friends. But then they noticed how Emma seemed to shy away from the school bus driver when she was picked up each day, avoiding eye contact and clutching her backpack tightly to her chest. The next step in Emma's behavior was even more alarming. She began to show signs of fear around the school altogether, not just the bathrooms. She'd sit in the car outside the school for several minutes, staring at the building as if weighing whether she could even go inside. On some mornings, she would beg her parents not to leave her. "I don't feel well today, Mom," she'd say. "Can I stay home?" But this wasn't the usual feigned illness that children sometimes use to avoid school. This was different. This was genuine fear. And it wasn't just about schoolwork or the usual social anxieties. Something much more sinister was at play. Michael and Sarah weren't sure what to make of these changes, but what troubled them the most was how their attempts to talk to Emma about it only seemed to make things worse. She'd withdraw further into herself, refusing to speak on the matter. It wasn't until Sarah overheard a conversation one afternoon that things began to take a darker turn. Emma was talking to her best friend, Lily, on the phone. The conversation was casual at first, filled with the usual chatter about school assignments and the upcoming weekend, but then Sarah overheard a word that sent a chill down her spine. "He." "I don't want to go near him anymore, Lily," Emma said in a trembling voice. "I can't. I don't want to. Please don't tell anyone." The moment those words reached Sarah's ears, she knew something wasn't right. Who was Emma talking about? And why was she so scared? It was then that the question began to form in her mind. Was someone at school making Emma feel unsafe? Sarah tried to reassure herself, dismissing it as a misunderstanding, but the more she thought about it, the more the pieces seemed to fall into place. Was there a boy who had been bothering Emma at school? Was it a case of bullying, or was there something more to this situation that she didn't yet understand? The following day, Michael and Sarah met with Emma's teacher, Mrs. Parker, to discuss the troubling behavior. Mrs. Parker, a woman who had taught at the school for over a decade, was known for her no-nonsense attitude and her keen understanding of children. At first, she assured them that she had not noticed anything out of the ordinary. But when Sarah gently pressed her about Emma's bathroom issues, Mrs. Parker's tone shifted ever so slightly. "Well, you know how kids are at this age," she said, avoiding eye contact. Sometimes they get shy about certain things. There might be something she's not telling you." Her response was vague, but it was enough to make Sarah's stomach turn. Was Mrs. Parker hiding something? With every question, the fog surrounding Emma's refusal to use the bathroom grew thicker. But then, things took an unexpected turn. After their meeting with Mrs. Parker, Michael and Sarah decided to speak with the school counselor, Mr. Davis, who had a reputation for being very helpful with troubled students. Mr. Davis had always been kind and understanding with Emma in the past, offering her a safe space whenever she needed it. He reassured them that Emma was a bright, well-adjusted child, but there was still something off about his demeanor when the subject of the bathroom came up. "You know, sometimes kids just have an aversion to certain spaces," he said. "But we're keeping an eye on her. Everything seems fine otherwise." Was Mr. Davis being honest? Or was he too brushing aside a serious issue? As Sarah replayed the conversation in her mind, a nagging feeling settled in her chest. Something didn't feel right, and it was growing harder to ignore. Then came the day Emma's parents decided to take matters into their own hands. With the growing sense of unease and the cryptic conversations, Michael and Sarah agreed to install a hidden camera in the school bathroom. They had no idea what they were about to uncover. The truth was buried deep within the walls of that school, and they were about to peel back the layers to reveal a web of secrets that no one had even considered. But here's where things get even more chilling. As Emma's parents anxiously awaited the footage, they began to notice something strange about their own interactions with the school staff. It was as though certain people were keeping their distance, acting distant, even avoiding eye contact when they crossed paths. Were they aware of something Emma's parents didn't know? Was there a cover-up, or was there simply something more sinister that no one was ready to admit? The answers were just beginning to surface, and the hidden camera footage was about to reveal the terrifying truth that no one could have predicted. As the parents prepared to review the footage, they had no idea how much darker things were about to get. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the truth was far more twisted than they could have ever imagined. Who was responsible for Emma's growing fear? What would they discover when the camera revealed the horrors hidden within those school walls? All they could do now was wait and hope that the answers they were about to uncover would give them the closure they desperately needed. When Michael and Sarah finally managed to get their hands on the hidden camera footage, they sat down, their hearts racing with anticipation. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the key to unlocking the mystery behind Emma's growing fear and her refusal to use the school bathroom. As they pressed play, the grainy footage flickered to life. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. There was nothing out of the ordinary about the bustling school bathroom. Kids laughing, chatting, and using the facilities like any other day. But then, the camera captured a moment that sent a chill down their spines. Emma entered the bathroom, but as soon as she stepped inside, she froze. Her body stiffened, and her eyes darted nervously around the room. She looked toward the exit, clearly weighing her options, before turning back and quickly walking out. At first, it seemed like just another sign of Emma's anxiety, but there was something in her eyes, something that hinted at an underlying fear. Michael and Sarah watched in silence, exchanging uneasy glances as they continued to watch. Just as they were about to stop the footage, something shifted. The camera caught a glimpse of a figure in the corner of the room. A shadow moved in the background, someone just out of sight. The figure lingered there for a moment before retreating quickly into the hallway, but not before Emma's expression shifted into one of pure terror. She glanced around once more, as if making sure no one saw her, before she darted out of the bathroom. Michael paused the video, his finger trembling over the remote. "Who was that?" he whispered, more to himself than to Sarah. The shadow had been quick, barely visible, but it was enough to make their hearts race. Was it a teacher, a student, or someone they hadn't even considered? They had no idea, but the piece of footage they had just witnessed raised more questions than answers. And now, the mystery was far deeper than they had ever anticipated. But as they prepared to dig deeper, something unexpected happened. The next day, they received a call from Mrs. Parker, the teacher who had initially reassured them that nothing was wrong. Her voice was strained, almost apologetic. "Michael, Sarah," she began, I've been asked by the school administration to speak with you about the footage you've been looking into. We're concerned that this might be causing more stress for Emma, and we feel it might be best if you stop investigating further." The sudden shift in tone was jarring. Mrs. Parker had been kind, almost too kind, in their previous meetings. Now, she sounded guarded, almost as if she were being forced to speak through gritted teeth. Michael, confused and increasingly alarmed, asked her what she meant by concerned, but she quickly dismissed his questions. "It's just a matter of protocol," she said, her voice becoming colder with each word. "We want to ensure Emma's well-being, and sometimes these things can get out of hand. Please consider dropping this investigation. It's not healthy for her." The line went dead after that, and Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Mrs. Parker's warning had the undertone of something more than just concern. It felt like a subtle threat, an attempt to silence them before they could uncover more. Despite the warning, Michael and Sarah refused to back down. The hidden camera footage had revealed enough to make them certain that there was something deeply wrong at that school. They knew they had to continue digging, but what they didn't expect was just how far some people would go to keep the truth buried. In the days that followed, things started to go awry in ways they couldn't have predicted. First, the footage they had copied to a flash drive mysteriously disappeared. Michael had saved the file on his personal computer, but when he went to check it the next morning, the folder was gone, vanished without a trace. He scoured his computer, desperate to find any sign of it, but there was nothing. The drive had been wiped clean. Someone somewhere had gotten to it first. It wasn't just the footage that disappeared. Small things began to feel off. Their phone calls to the school went unreturned, and when they did manage to speak to someone, their questions were met with vague answers and uncomfortable silence. It seemed like the more they tried to uncover, the harder it became to find anyone willing to help. But even more troubling was the strange behavior of Mr. Davis, the school counselor. He had always been supportive in the past, offering Emma guidance whenever she needed it, but now, he was avoiding their calls. When Michael finally managed to corner him in the school parking lot one afternoon, Mr. Davis acted like he didn't know what Michael was talking about. "I told you everything I know," he insisted, his eyes darting nervously as if he were afraid of being overheard. "Emma's a great kid. She's going through a phase, that's all." Michael didn't believe him. There was something in Mr. Davis's voice, something that didn't quite add up. It was as though he was hiding something. As Michael walked away, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Was Mr. Davis involved in this somehow? Had he been complicit in whatever was happening to Emma? Or was he just another victim of whatever twisted game was playing out behind the school's closed doors? It wasn't just the school staff that seemed to be acting strangely. Sarah received a visit from a former classmate, Natalie, who had heard about Emma's situation. Natalie had always been the type to lend a hand when someone was in need, but this time, her visit felt off. She was overly friendly, almost too eager to help, offering advice that seemed too rehearsed. "I know a guy," she said, leaning in closer, as if sharing a secret. "Someone who knows what's going on at that school. He's been there a long time and he's seen things." But when Sarah asked for more details, Natalie quickly changed the subject, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. The entire conversation left Sarah feeling unsettled. Could Natalie be hiding something? Was she working with the school to prevent them from uncovering the truth? Everything was becoming more complicated, and the more they tried to piece together the fragments of Emma's story, the more elusive the truth became. Every lead seemed to slip through their fingers, and every ally they thought they could trust turned out to have their own hidden agendas. Michael and Sarah had reached a breaking point. The mystery was deepening, and they couldn't help but wonder, who could they trust in this tangled web of lies and deceit? Then, just when they thought they might finally have a breakthrough, something happened that no one saw coming, a warning from someone who had been watching them all along. A mysterious letter arrived at their doorstep, and signed and with no return address. Inside, there was only one sentence: "Stop looking or you'll regret it." The tension was at an all-time high. They had no idea who had sent the letter or what it meant, but one thing was clear: someone was desperate to keep them from finding the truth. And now, Michael and Sarah had to decide, would they continue down this dangerous path, risking everything to uncover the truth, or would they walk away, and leave Emma's fear to grow unchecked. The clock was ticking, and the secrets of that school were waiting to be exposed. But at what cost? As they stood on the edge of the unknown, Michael and Sarah had to make a choice that would change their lives, and Emma's, forever. The next morning, as Michael and Sarah tried to make sense of the cryptic warning, something unexpected happened. Sarah received a call from her mother, Linda, who lived out of state. Their conversation started like any other, catching up on family news, talking about the weather, exchanging pleasantries. But then Linda's voice took on a strange, serious tone. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," she said, her words careful, measured. "I got a letter today. It's about Emma. It's a warning just like the one you got." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, and she froze, unable to speak for a moment. Her mother, who had always been the one offering reassurance and calm, sounded scared, genuinely scared. "It came in the mail this morning, no return address, just like yours." It said, "If you keep digging, you'll ruin everything." The words echoed in Sarah's mind, and she could feel the weight of them settle deep within her chest. It was too coincidental, too connected. The letter Sarah's mother received had no mention of the school, no indication of how her mother could even be linked to the investigation. And yet, here was someone else being drawn into this web of threats, someone whose connection to Emma wasn't clear at all. This new development didn't just deepen the mystery, it expanded it. If Sarah's mother was now part of this, it meant that someone was watching them from a distance, pulling strings they hadn't even noticed yet. Sarah felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Was her mother being targeted because she was family, or was it something more? Was there something about Linda's past, something buried, that had triggered this warning? After the call, Sarah tried to reach out to Michael, but he was in the middle of a meeting with a new potential ally, someone who claimed to have information that could help them unravel the mystery. This new person, Daniel, had been a former student at the school and had left under strange circumstances. Daniel had heard whispers around town that something shady was happening at the school, but he hadn't been able to put all the pieces together. He'd recently returned to town and wanted to make amends for whatever had happened. But as soon as he mentioned the school, Michael's gut told him to be cautious. There was something too eager in Daniel's demeanor, something that felt rehearsed. Was he genuinely trying to help, or was he just another part of the puzzle, someone with their own agenda? In the meeting, Daniel revealed something that only made the mystery even more confounding. "I overheard something at the school before I left," Daniel said quietly, glancing over his shoulder as if afraid someone might hear him. "There's a room, an old storage closet near the school's gym. Not many people know about it, but it's locked up tight. I've seen people go in and out of there late at night, teachers, school staff. They don't talk about it, and no one's ever seen what's inside. But I know it's connected to Emma's fear. I know it." Michael listened intently, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. A hidden room? Was it the same one that had been used for whatever dark secret was lurking behind the school's seemingly normal exterior? And why hadn't they heard about it before? Daniel's mention of the room felt like a key to something larger, but Michael's instincts screamed that it was a trap. This was too convenient. It felt as though Daniel was offering them a lead just when they were starting to lose hope. Was he trying to get them to investigate the room because he wanted them to stumble into something dangerous? Or was he genuinely trying to help? As Michael and Sarah continued to untangle the web of secrets surrounding Emma, new questions kept arising. The day after Sarah's unsettling call from her mother, a local news report began circulating about a student from a nearby town who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The case, still unresolved, seemed eerily familiar. The missing student's name was Lucas Hamilton, and he had attended the same school where Emma now studied, but he'd left under strange circumstances long before she arrived. According to the report, Lucas had been last seen in the school bathroom, just like Emma. The timeline and the similarities between their experiences felt too close to ignore. Could there be a connection between Lucas's disappearance and the strange events surrounding Emma? Was this some sort of pattern? And if it was, who else might be involved? As Michael started to dig into Lucas's disappearance, the pieces of the puzzle continued to shift. The more he learned, the more the investigation spiraled out of control. Just when he thought he was getting closer to answers, New pieces of evidence began to surface that contradicted everything they believed they knew. The school's records, which they had managed to sneak a peek at, revealed that Lucas's disappearance had been swept under the rug. His case had been marked as unsolved, but there were no signs of an investigation ever having been conducted. This didn't make sense. A missing student, a potential crime, and no investigation? That was beyond suspicious. And then there was the issue with the school itself. As Michael continued his search, he discovered that there had been several incidents in the past, all involving students, that had been kept quiet by the school administration. These incidents, ranging from unexplained injuries to strange behavioral shifts in students, had all been quickly buried or overlooked. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply wrong at the heart of the school, something that was being hidden from the public eye.
But why?
And who was trying to keep it all under wraps? At the same time, the pressure from the school's administration continued to grow. They had received another warning, this time from the principal herself. She had called Michael and Sarah into her office and made it clear that they were no longer welcome on school grounds. The message was clear: stop asking questions or face the consequences. The tension in the air was palpable as the principal's icy stare bore into them. "You've been warned," she said with a cold, calculated calmness before turning her back on them. As Michael and Sarah walked out of the principal's office, a feeling of unease settled over them. They knew they couldn't stop now. Something was wrong at that school, and they weren't going to let anyone intimidate them into silence. But as the walls continued to close in around them, it was clear that the stakes had just been raised higher. They weren't just fighting to uncover the truth anymore. They were fighting to protect Emma and possibly others from a darkness that seemed to reach far beyond what they could have ever imagined. And just as they were about to regroup and plan their next move, they received an unexpected call from an anonymous source, someone who claimed to have all the answers. The only catch? They had to meet in person alone. The uncertainty of who this person could be, and what they knew, sent a wave of dread through both of them. Was this the breakthrough they had been waiting for, or another dangerous twist in the tale? With no way of knowing what lay ahead, Michael and Sarah had no choice but to take the risk. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. As Michael and Sarah sat in their car, parked on the outskirts of town, the gravity of the situation began to weigh heavily on them. The call from the anonymous source was still fresh in their minds, but something about it didn't sit right with either of them. They had both agreed to meet this person, desperate for any lead, but as they sat in silence, their nerves grew tight. The streets around them were quiet, eerily so, and the low hum of the car's engine felt like the only sound in the world. Michael's hand gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white from the tension. Every time he glanced out of the window, he felt like he was being watched, like there were eyes on him, hidden in the shadows. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following them. The thought had been lingering at the back of his mind for days now, ever since they first began digging deeper into Emma's situation. It was subtle at first, someone in a car tailing them, always just a few cars behind. But then it started to feel deliberate. They would turn a corner, and the same car would turn with them. Stop at a light, and it would stop too. Michael had tried to shake it off at first, convincing himself it was just paranoia, but now, sitting in the car with Sarah, it felt undeniable. They were being followed. "Do you feel that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loudly might bring the feeling to life. Michael didn't need to ask what she meant, he felt it too. The air was thick with tension, heavy with the unspoken truth that something wasn't right. They were both on edge, eyes darting around the parking lot, checking their surroundings for any sign of movement. And then it happened. A figure appeared at the corner of their vision, standing in the darkness by the alleyway. Michael couldn't make out the details, just a silhouette, unmoving. His heart raced, and for a moment, it felt like the world around him had stopped. The figure didn't move, didn't seem to acknowledge them at all, but Michael could feel its presence. It was like a warning, a shadow looming over them, reminding them of how deep this rabbit hole went. Sarah's hand slowly reached for her phone, as if trying to call someone, anyone, just in case, but her fingers hesitated above the screen. She could feel it too, the sense that everything had escalated beyond their control. Without saying a word, They both simultaneously decided it was time to leave. Michael started the car, the engine humming to life as they quickly pulled out of the parking lot, eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. For a moment, there was nothing. The streets were empty, the town as still as it had always been. But as they neared the first intersection, Michael caught a glimpse of a car in his peripheral vision, a black sedan, unmarked, just a few feet behind them. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. It was them again. The same car that had been trailing them for days. "Sarah, stay calm," Michael said, his voice tight as he tried to keep his composure. But his heart was racing now, faster than he had ever felt it. The car behind them was closing the distance, its headlights cutting through the dark like a predator in pursuit. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening, whatever they were uncovering, was leading them to something much bigger, something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice shaking now. She was scanning the streets, looking for a place to turn, some way to lose the car behind them. But the more they drove, the closer the sedan seemed to get. It was following them, mirroring their every move. There was no way it was just a coincidence anymore. Michael knew they were in serious danger. His thoughts raced, spiraling into the worst-case scenarios. What if they were being watched all along? What if the people behind this, whoever they were, knew everything about them, knew what they were doing, knew where they were going, and were just waiting for the right moment to strike? Panic surged through Michael's veins. He needed to get Sarah out of here. They couldn't go home. They couldn't go anywhere they had been. The world around them had become a maze, and the walls were closing in. Suddenly, the car behind them made a move. It wasn't a gentle swerve or a simple turn. It was calculated, sharp. The sedan sped up, cutting in front of them and forcing Michael to slam on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a collision. The impact of the situation hit Michael like a cold wave. This was no longer just a feeling of being watched. This was an attack. Someone was trying to force them off the road. "Go, go, go," Sarah screamed, her voice full of panic now. Michael didn't need any more encouragement. He floored the gas pedal, weaving through traffic as quickly as he could. The black sedan followed, relentless, its headlights cutting through the night as it stayed on their tail. They turned into a side street, hoping to lose the sedan, but it was right behind them. Michael's mind was racing, trying to think of a way out, a place to hide, but the more they drove, the more hopeless it seemed. He could feel the weight of the unknown bearing down on him. How many times had they narrowly escaped from danger like this? How many times had they come so close to the edge and not even known it? As they took another turn, Michael saw something that made his blood run cold. Up ahead, in the distance, there was a figure standing on the sidewalk, someone who looked all too familiar. The figure was tall, with a broad frame, wearing a hoodie that obscured most of their features. Michael's heart skipped a beat when he recognized the person. It was Daniel, the man who had offered them the supposed lead, the man who had acted so helpful. But now, standing there in the dark, Daniel seemed different. His stance was stiff, almost like he was waiting for them, like he knew exactly where they would be and when. "Michael, stop," Sarah gasped, but it was too late. As they approached the figure, the sedan behind them sped up, nearly grazing the rear of their car. And then, just as they were about to pass Daniel, something shifted in the air. A sharp, metallic sound rang out, followed by a blinding flash. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Michael slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. The sedan had vanished, but the threat was far from over. Something was wrong, more wrong than they could have ever anticipated. The game had changed. They weren't just being watched anymore. They were being hunted. And as Michael sat in the driver's seat, heart pounding, he realized with a sinking feeling that this was no longer just about Emma. It was about something much darker, and they were too deep in it to turn back. The tension in the car was palpable, and as Michael's eyes scanned the rearview mirror, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly, disastrously wrong. The sedan had disappeared into the night, but the shadow of its presence lingered like a suffocating cloud. His pulse was still racing, his hands shaking from the adrenaline, but his mind was spinning faster than he could process. Something had happened on that last turn, something that made him realize how little he truly knew about what they were involved in. Sarah's frantic breaths filled the car, but her eyes had that same worried glint. Something wasn't adding up. They were supposed to be chasing the truth about Emma, but now it felt as if they had stumbled into something far bigger, far darker than either of them could have ever imagined. As they pulled into an empty alleyway, trying to regroup, Michael finally found the courage to look over at Sarah. What the hell just happened back there? His voice trembled despite himself, but he wasn't sure if it was from fear or something else, a sudden sense of betrayal that gnawed at him. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She just stared straight ahead, her mind clearly racing as she tried to make sense of everything. For a moment, the silence between them was suffocating, before she finally spoke, her voice low and filled with disbelief. "You remember Daniel, right?" she said, her words coming out in a rush. Michael's stomach dropped. Of course he remembered Daniel. He had been the one to provide them with what they thought was a credible lead, the one who'd seemed so eager to help. The same man who had appeared at the worst possible moment, just as things had started to spiral out of control. But now, as Sarah spoke, Michael could feel a sudden shift in the air, a chill creeping up his spine. "Yeah, what about him?" he asked, though his gut told him the answer was going to change everything. Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes not leaving the dark street ahead. "I didn't want to say anything earlier, but when we were leaving the warehouse earlier today, I saw something in his car. Something I didn't want to believe." She paused, collecting her thoughts, as if what she was about to say didn't even feel real to her. "I saw a picture of Emma in his glove compartment." The words hit Michael like a punch to the chest. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His mind refused to process what Sarah had just told him. A picture of Emma?
How could that be?
How could Daniel, of all people, have a picture of her? He wasn't supposed to be involved with this. Michael trusted him. He had been the one to give them hope when they were grasping at straws. But now, the pieces of the puzzle weren't fitting together the way they should. They weren't just looking for Emma anymore. They were looking for answers about a much larger conspiracy. "What do you mean, a picture of Emma?" Michael managed to ask, though his voice barely sounded like his own. "I mean, it was a picture of her. One from a few years ago. But not like any picture I've seen before. It was personal, almost like he was watching her." Sarah's hands gripped the seat tightly, as if she was trying to hold herself together. "I didn't think much of it at first, but now, with everything that's happening, it doesn't sit right. It feels wrong. I thought maybe I was just overthinking it, but..." Michael didn't want to believe it. He couldn't. Daniel had been their ally. But the more he thought about it, the more pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and none of them made sense. Daniel had given them the information they'd used to track Emma's last known whereabouts, but could it have all been a setup? Could Daniel have been feeding them misinformation this entire time? Just as Michael was about to ask Sarah more questions, the unexpected sound of a car engine revving cut through the silence. Without thinking, Michael looked up and saw headlights, brighter, closer than he had expected, flooding the alleyway. His heart skipped a beat as a black SUV turned the corner, speeding directly toward them. But it wasn't just any car. It was the same SUV that had been following them earlier, the one they had lost in the pursuit. And now it was back, with an intensity that could only mean one thing. Someone knew exactly where they were. Michael slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as he maneuvered away, but the SUV was relentless, cutting off every escape route they tried. Panic flooded his chest, making it harder to think clearly. Every instinct told him to get out of the car and run, but where? There was nowhere to hide. The only thing he could do was drive, and drive fast. He sped down narrow streets, darting through stop signs, trying to shake the SUV off their tail, but no matter where he turned, the vehicle was always right behind them, closing the gap with each passing second. "Michael!" Sarah screamed, her hands clutching the dashboard. "This isn't just about Emma. It's bigger. There's something more they're hiding. Daniel, he's not who we think he is." Her words hit him like a slap to the face. Could it be true? Was Daniel more involved than they ever realized? But there was no time to question anything further. The SUV was getting closer. They needed to get away, and they needed to do it fast. But just as the black vehicle came into striking distance, Michael glanced out of the rearview mirror once more and saw something that stopped his heart cold. The person behind the wheel of the SUV wasn't someone he had ever expected. It wasn't just some random driver. It was a face he knew, someone who had been in the background of this case the entire time, someone whose loyalty Michael had never once questioned. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. The truth wasn't just hidden in the shadows. It was staring him in the face, and it was someone he had trusted all along. Michael's pulse spiked, his hands trembling on the wheel, as he came to the horrifying conclusion that everything he thought he knew was a lie. In the distance, the SUV's headlights grew brighter, and the truth, dark and dangerous, crept closer. There would be no escaping it now. Michael's heart pounded in his chest as the black SUV tailgated them, its headlights blinding him in the rear-view mirror. Each turn he made seemed futile. No matter where he drove, the vehicle stuck to them like a shadow, always a few feet behind, never letting up. The only thing he could hear now was the roaring engine of the SUV and Sarah's panicked voice beside him, urging him to drive faster, to lose them, to find some way to get out of this alive. But the more they tried to escape, the more trapped they felt. The city streets seemed to close in around them, a maze that only led to dead ends and dark alleys. There was nowhere to run, no safe place to hide. "Michael, please," Sarah screamed, her hands gripping the door handle, her eyes wide with terror. "We can't outrun them. We need to stop. We need to figure this out before it's too late." His grip tightened on the steering wheel as he gunned the engine, the car surging forward. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his thoughts racing as fast as the car. How had they ended up in this mess? It was supposed to be simple: find out what happened to Emma, piece together the fragments of the story, and move on. But every step they had taken had led them further down a rabbit hole of betrayal, manipulation, and danger. Now, they were on the run, and the one person he had trusted more than anyone was the one who might have orchestrated it all. The weight of Sarah's words crashed over him like a tidal wave. Daniel. Michael's mind struggled to make sense of it, but every moment of doubt had been justified. Everything that didn't add up, every tiny red flag had now exploded into an undeniable truth. Daniel wasn't who he said he was. The picture of Emma in his car, the cryptic messages, the way he had seemed too eager to help, Michael had overlooked it all, trusting him without question. And now, it felt like the world was unraveling at the seams. But it wasn't just Daniel. Michael's phone buzzed in his pocket, and when he pulled it out to check, he froze. The message was short, simple, and chilling. "Stop digging. Or else." The sender was unknown, but the threat felt real. There was no doubt now that they were in over their heads, and the only thing they had left was the truth. But at what cost? Michael's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, a surge of panic running through his veins as he weighed his options. They could keep running, try to lose the SUV, and hope for some miracle. But deep down, he knew that was a false hope. There was no escaping whatever was coming for them. The other option was far more terrifying: confront the people behind all of this, people who were willing to do anything to protect their secrets. The truth would come at a price. The decision gnawed at him like a heavy weight pressing on his chest. What was he willing to sacrifice? Was his life worth more than the truth he was trying to uncover? He glanced at Sarah, whose face had drained of color. She was terrified, and rightfully so. She had trusted Daniel, too. She had believed in the mission, in the idea of finding Emma and putting the pieces together. But now, everything they had worked for, everything they had hoped for, was slipping through their fingers like sand. "I can't," Sarah's voice broke through the silence, and Michael turned to her, his own fear reflected in her eyes. "I can't do this anymore, Michael. I can't just keep running. We need to stop. We need to find out who's really behind this before it's too late." Her voice cracked as she spoke, the weight of their situation evident in every word. Michael took a deep breath, fighting the overwhelming urge to break down. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, that they would figure it out, that they just needed to stick together. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. The further they went, the more dangerous it became. The closer they got to the truth, the higher the stakes. It wasn't just their safety at risk anymore. It was their lives. He glanced at his phone again. Another message. This time a photo, a grainy image of his car from earlier that day, parked outside the warehouse. A clear warning that whoever was behind this knew exactly where they were, every step they took. He couldn't ignore it anymore. The people they were dealing with weren't just shady informants or well-meaning allies. These were dangerous people with power, influence, and a motive that was still unclear. And they weren't going to stop until Michael and Sarah were silenced. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. "We're running out of time. I don't know who to trust anymore." Her words stung, and Michael's mind raced to find an answer. There were too many variables, too many pieces of the puzzle that didn't fit. The danger was real, but the truth was still out there. They couldn't just give up now. But they also couldn't ignore the threats that were getting closer by the minute. And then it hit him. The ultimatum. The one choice that might give them a shot at finding the answers, at exposing the people behind all of this. But it would mean betraying the one person who had been there from the start. It would mean walking away from the very thing they had been fighting for. Michael felt a cold sweat break out across his skin as he realized what needed to be done. They had to confront Daniel. They had to go to him. Ask him point-blank what he knew, what he had been hiding. It was the only way forward, but it was also the most dangerous path they could take. And if Daniel was involved in this mess, if he really was the one orchestrating everything from behind the scenes, then Michael was walking straight into a trap. His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message. It was a call. The name on the screen made his stomach twist. It was Daniel. Michael hesitated for a moment before answering, the weight of the decision settling heavily on his shoulders. He knew the conversation could change everything. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and they would be exposed. But there was no turning back now. "Michael." Daniel's voice came through the speaker, calm and steady, as if nothing was wrong. "We need to talk." Michael's grip tightened on the wheel. His mind screamed at him to hang up, to end the call and keep running, but he couldn't. He had no choice but to face the man who might be the key to unraveling the mystery, or the man who might destroy them both. The truth was closer than ever, but so was the danger. And Michael had no idea which one would reach him first. "You're right," Michael said, his voice tight. "We do need to talk." The sound of Daniel's voice crackled through the phone, but it didn't bring comfort. It was chilling in its calmness, like a predator toying with its prey before making the final strike. "Michael, I hope you understand that what's happening right now is bigger than you and me. It's bigger than this entire mess you've stumbled into," Daniel said, his tone betraying nothing. Michael's blood ran cold. Every instinct in him screamed to hang up, to disconnect, to drive as far away as possible, but his hands were locked onto the steering wheel, his body frozen. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. This wasn't just a missing person or a set of lies. It was a massive, shadowy web of people, of systems, pulling the strings from a distance, and Michael had gotten caught right in the center of it. "Bigger than us?" Michael echoed, his voice shaking with the weight of the realization. "What are you talking about, Daniel? What's really going on here?" He glanced at Sarah, who had gone pale, staring straight ahead, her face lined with confusion and fear. She had been with him through this entire mess, and now, as the pieces fell into place, she was just as terrified as he was. But Michael couldn't let the fear take over. He couldn't afford to panic now. Not when they were this close. Daniel let out a quiet sigh on the other end of the line, almost as if he were disappointed by Michael's naivete. "It's about control, Michael. The kind of power you can't even imagine. The kind of power that controls everything. The media, the money, the people who think they're safe. None of us are safe. Not anymore. And the worst part? You've been helping them all along, without even realizing it." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "Helping who? What are you talking about?" He glanced over at Sarah, who was gripping her seat as if she might jump out of the car any second. Michael's mind raced, trying to process what Daniel was saying. Had he been manipulated all along? Had everything he thought he knew been part of some sick game? Before Daniel could respond, the line went dead. Silence filled the car, deafening in its intensity. Michael's breath caught in his throat, his thoughts spinning wildly. What had just happened? What had Daniel meant by all of that? And then, as if on cue, the black SUV reappeared in the rearview mirror. It had been tailing them since they first left the safe house, but now it seemed even closer, almost too close for comfort. This is it, Michael muttered under his breath, the panic rising in his chest. We need to get off the road. He turned sharply into a side street, his tires screeching as he desperately tried to put distance between them and the pursuing vehicle. But the SUV wasn't backing off. It stayed right behind them, closing the gap, no matter how many turns Michael made. Michael, what's going on? Why are they still following us? What's happening? Sarah asked, her voice trembling with fear. But Michael didn't have an answer for her. His mind was clouded, racing to make sense of the situation, but every answer seemed to lead to more questions.
Who was after them? And why?
As the car sped through the streets, Michael's phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. His fingers shook as he read it. We know what you're trying to do. It's over. Give it up now before it's too late. You can't win this. The words seemed to burn into his brain. Someone's trying to stop us, Michael muttered, his voice low. This is way bigger than we thought. They want to silence us. And I think they've already silenced people before us. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air between them. Sarah's eyes widened. No, she whispered, the realization dawning on her. You think they... Her words were cut off as a loud bang echoed from the back of the car, and the rear window shattered in an explosion of glass. Michael instinctively swerved, narrowly avoiding the sharp shards, and in that moment, he knew they were no longer just being followed. They were being hunted. He slammed his foot on the gas, the car roaring to life as he raced down the street, trying to outrun the danger. But it was no use. The SUV was closing in too fast. There was no escape. Michael, what do we do? What do we do? Sarah's voice was frantic now, but Michael's mind was locked in. He couldn't focus on anything but the road ahead of him. His heart was hammering in his chest as he thought back to everything that had led them here. Every step, every clue, every betrayal, it all pointed back to the same thing. This wasn't just a fight for Emma or the truth. This was a battle for survival. And as the SUV drew even closer, the realization hit him with brutal clarity. Daniel wasn't just a part of this. He was the mastermind. He was the one pulling the strings, orchestrating everything from the shadows. Michael had been a pawn in this entire game, and now, it seemed, he was about to pay the price for it. A dark figure appeared in the SUV's side window, a figure Michael recognized. It was one of Daniel's associates, someone Michael had met only once but hadn't thought much about. Now, as the man stared at him with a cold, unreadable expression, Michael realized just how deep the conspiracy ran. It wasn't just a few bad apples. This was a massive, organized operation, and they were all part of it. Sarah, we need to make a choice right now, Michael said through clenched teeth, his voice low and determined. We either confront Daniel and everyone else who's been involved, or we keep running, but if we keep running, there's no coming back. We can't hide forever. Sarah looked at him, fear evident in her eyes, but there was something else there too, a spark of determination, of defiance. She nodded slowly, her jaw set. Let's finish this. Whatever it takes. With that, Michael swerved off the road, heading straight for the abandoned warehouse where it all started. They couldn't run anymore. They had to face it head-on. The endgame was here, and it was going to be a fight to the finish. But no matter what happened, Michael knew one thing for certain. They couldn't win this war without uncovering the full scope of what was going on and exposing the truth to everyone, no matter the cost. The warehouse was eerily quiet, the only sounds the sharp echoes of their footsteps as Michael and Sarah crept through the darkened space. The air was thick with tension, almost suffocating, as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Michael's pulse was a drumbeat in his ears, the weight of everything they'd uncovered, the lies, the betrayals, the endless cat-and-mouse chase, bearing down on him with crushing force. This was it, the moment he had feared and longed for in equal measure. They had reached the heart of the storm. A sudden noise ahead, a soft click, sounded like a gunshot in the stillness, and Michael instinctively grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her into the shadows. The figure that appeared before them, stepping out from the darkness, was one Michael knew all too well. Daniel. The same man who had once been his ally, his friend, now standing across from him, his face a mask of cold indifference. "So, you've come to play the hero." Daniel's voice was low, almost mocking, as he glanced at Sarah. "Did you really think you could walk away from this, Michael? That you could just expose the truth and walk out alive?" Michael's heart was pounding in his chest as he stepped forward, trying to hold onto his composure. "I'm not walking away from anything. This ends tonight. All of it." His words hung in the air between them, thick with the weight of everything he had uncovered. "You used me.
You used Sarah.
And you used Emma. You orchestrated it all." Daniel let out a hollow laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't use you, Michael. You were always a part of this. You just didn't know it." He paused, looking at them both with a faint glimmer of something like pity in his gaze. "You think you're the good guys in this? The truth you want to expose? It doesn't matter. None of it matters anymore. You're not the first to try, and you won't be the last." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about? What's the endgame here?" His voice was hoarse with desperation, but Daniel merely tilted his head, as if considering how much he should reveal. "There's no endgame, Michael," Daniel said finally, his voice growing colder. "This is the way the world works. You can't change it. You can't expose it. You can only be a part of it, or you get swallowed whole." He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing as he looked directly at Sarah. "You don't know it yet, but you've already chosen your side. You've always been part of the system, and now it's too late to turn back." Michael could feel Sarah stiffen beside him, her breath quickening as the truth began to sink in. It wasn't just about Emma, or even their own lives anymore. This was bigger, something deeper than either of them had realized. Suddenly, Daniel's expression changed. His eyes flickered to the side, a brief moment of hesitation, before he raised a gun from his side and pointed it directly at Michael. Time seemed to freeze in that instant. Michael's heart stopped. The weight of the situation crashed down on him, and the reality of what they were facing hit him with brutal clarity. "You thought you had it all figured out, didn't you?" Daniel's voice was now low and dangerous, the finality in his words sending a cold chill down Michael's spine. "But this was always going to end like this. You've seen too much. And now you have to pay the price for it." Michael's mind raced as he tried to think of his next move, every instinct screaming at him to run, to duck, to do anything to escape. But before he could react, a sharp sound rang out from the darkness. A shot fired, but it wasn't from Daniel's gun. A blur of motion caught Michael's eye as a figure stepped from the shadows, someone he hadn't expected to see. It was Sarah. Her hand was shaking as she held a gun, but her expression was filled with fierce determination, the weight of her own secret history now revealed in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said, her voice steady, but there was a sadness there, something regretful. "But I'm not who you think I am." The words hit him like a slap. Sarah? Sarah had been working with Daniel all along? Michael's mind whirled as he tried to process this shocking revelation. "No," he whispered, the disbelief clear in his voice. "No, Sarah, how could you?" But Sarah's gaze remained locked on Daniel, her hand still gripping the gun with a surprising strength. "I never had a choice, Michael," she said softly, her voice filled with an edge of sadness. "I've been in this game long before you ever knew it existed. And now you're part of it too. You just didn't know who to trust." Michael's thoughts were racing, trying to make